This will be fun. I've seen David Long play Lance before. He's skilled with this deck. Not much of a surprise to see him starting off at 4-0, though I do wonder if this is a matchup that he's happy against, or even if he knows the person that's on the other side of the table. Right? Because when you sit down, I have a feature match against who? Is it because I'm playing lands, I guess? Or, oh, Julian is very, very skilled with this Elves deck as we are underway here in round number 5 of 9. It's a Life from the Loam, so Julian immediately knows what he's up against, and this should be interesting to watch if he feels this is a good matchup or a bad one and what the result will be.
One of the best reasons to play the lands deck is the fact that it has access to Mox Diamond. David, with a turn 1 Life from the Loam, has one of the more powerful starts this deck is capable of.
It's time to dredge 3. There's a Gamble, a Wasteland, and a Crop Rotation. Those are the cards that go to the graveyard. One thing you will also notice about Julian's deck is I believe, as I saw on Twitter, that I think almost all of it is foil or like the preferred additions of the card. His deck is absolutely beautiful. So that's one of the things I enjoy about watching Legacy is that the decks are very nice. As here's a Loam getting back a Wasteland.
We see Julian leading there on Forest. That is an intentional play there, knowing that lands, especially with a turn 1 Life from the Loam, has the potential to just wasteland its opponent out of the game.
His first play was a Quirion Ranger off that basic forest, as you mentioned. A lot of versions of this deck only play 1 forest, depending on who you are. Julian has 2. So pretty nice to have a deck that's pretty good against wasteland, even though it is kind of receding in popularity recently.
Yeah, both copies of basic forest in play for Julian.
2 Quirion Rangers and a Wirewood Symbiote as well, so not a bad start. See if he can put together some sort of natural order here, because there's the dredging of the Loam, a Thespian Stage of Verdant Catacombs, and another copy of Gamble. I believe that's the Arena edition of Quirion Ranger, I think.
This is interesting. The Loam engine's online for long, but this Elves deck, remember, this is still can play a lot like a combo deck. He's likely only 1, maybe 2 turns away from going off here and casting half his deck.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the next turn is, cast Glimpse, play Cradle, go absolutely crazy. Something that, a green deck, I guess in theory, shouldn't be able to do, but does quite easily. Here's a Thespian Stage from David. Aha, Punishing Fire. So he doesn't have Grove yet, but he does have Punishing Fire.
Yeah, it takes care of Wirewood Symbiote for him.
There's the beatdowns. Long going to go down to 17.
No combo turn yet then for Julian.
I haven't seen really anything that's all the explosive. I haven't seen Zenith yet. Haven't seen Elvish Visionary. Now he's just passing the turn. It seems to be a rather unimpressive draw thus far. Here's a Dredging of Loam. Wasteland, Horizon Canopy, and Dark Depths have been found.
Well, with the Thespian Stage that Long has in play, Dark Depths does assemble the combo. It's unusual that the lands deck can race Elves here with the Thespian Stage Dark Depths. Normally they take on a much more control route, but because Julian's not really comboing it, you might see David just try to go for an early kill.
Well, there's Loam. Target the 3 lands. No Grove of the Burn Willows yet. He hasn't turned that over, but he does have the Dark Depths, as you did mention, to be able to work his way towards making the 2020. That's one of the things that actually makes this deck appealing now, too. Why players have started to incorporate Crop Rotation, and the fact that you don't have to play a card like Barbarian Ring or whatever the heck you tried to win with before, which was, frankly, quite embarrassing how you were trying to win the game. But once you had someone kind of prison-locked, they couldn't really do anything, and however you won didn't matter, but that also made it so that you had some pretty bad matchups, too.
Yeah, the deck certainly was short on win conditions up until the printing of Thespian Stage.
Now you just get to play, 1 Dark Depths or 3, as David is here, because he wants to be able to continuously draw it. So Julian's going to sacrifice a Windswept Heath. That is Dryad Arbor. You saw David's land for the turn was just a copy of Mazes before passing the turn back. Perhaps this gives him a defense against the big Craterhoof turn.
See, just not much assembled for Julian right now. He's got a couple Elves in play, but not sure what he's building up toward.
I'm waiting to see him cast like Glimpse or Visionary or something.
Yeah.
This is easily the most
Zenith.
tame Elves draw I've ever seen.
Does have Elvish Visionary along with a pair of Wooded Foothills, it looks like.
He's got Cradle in his hand too.
It's more lands than you'd normally expect out of an Elves deck.
Yeah, there's Visionary. Draw a card. Green mana. Nettle Sentinel. Cradle.
And that taps for 4. This, I believe this is going to for, oh, the Dryad Arbor counts as 5. I believe it's still a natural order, and it is. Nettle Sentinel hitting the bin. Going to find most likely Craterhoof Behemoth. And with 5 creatures in play, that'll give guys 5/5 and trample. That will be a lethal attack here. Not necessarily lethal through Maze of Ith, though.
He'll be able to untap the Dryad Arbor with the Quirion Ranger. And so these creatures are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, +5/+5. So
that's lethal through the Maze of Ith.
Yep. Because the creatures have base 1/1 power. So
now, if David has a Punishing Fire in response to this Behemoth activation, he could kill one of the 1/1s.
Yeah.
He mazes, and this still looks like he's going to take 18.
And you see him doing the math right now. This isn't the first time Julian has done Craterhoof Behemoth math, and he's going to get the job done here. So Julian Knab is up a game here over David Long. Elves up a game over Lands. That was an interesting game to me because, like, Lands had the Dredge engine going, but was, like, really slow because there's no exploration of Mana Bond, and then Julian didn't really do very much, and all of a sudden, kill you.
And I think that you exactly hit it there. Lands had a pretty good start. It had a turn 1 life from the loam. What it had trouble doing was assembling its lock pieces earlier. David really could have used a crop rotation, a dredge into a tabernacle. There were certain things needed to find that he really couldn't there. Grove of the Burn Willows also would have worked. But that highlights some of the difficulties in the matchup for the Lands player.
We'll take a look at the sideboard here. David has some things that he wants to bring in very quickly, as you can see. There's a Chalice of the Void, a Thorn of Amethyst, a Seismic Assault, a 4th crop rotation, a Bajuka Bog, 4 Crows and Grip, 4 Sphere of Resistance, a Pithing Needle, and a Dark Depths. Love the Chalice, love the Seismic Assault, like the 4th crop rotation just because you either want to work your way towards Dark Depths or Tabernacle as consistently as you can. I suppose Grove of the Burn Willows as well for your Punishing Fire. And 4 Dark Depths feels like a lot, but I mean, maybe you just have to combo them.
You know, my guess is that you just can't race them with the combo. That I do like the crop rotation, to be fair. Tabernacle's an excellent tool against Elves decks. If they have a guy's Cradle, they can still pay through a Tabernacle, but outside of that, it becomes really difficult for the Elves player to keep his creatures going in the face of a Tabernacle.
I do also like the Pithing Needle on the sideboard. It has some utility in the matchup, so I expect to see that come in. We'll take a look at Julian's sideboard. You've got Elves in front of you. What do you see over there?
Well, there's not too much that he can actually use in his sideboard right now. He has a copy of Surgical Extraction, so he can use that to kind of hamper David's ability to dredge, to pick up the correct land, or to maybe dredge a life from the loam. So I imagine that would come in. Outside of the Surgical Extraction, a lot of the cards that are in Julian's sideboard, things like Cabal Therapy, Thoughtseize, Abrupt Decay, they really don't affect lands, so I don't imagine he'll bring too many of them in. One other card I like over, though, is Pithing Needle, which Julian has 1 copy of.
Yeah, I like that in his sideboard quite a bit, so we'll see how this does play out. I think it's favorable for lands. Like, just based off of what I just watched, it's just, you know, both players, I guess you could say, did their thing, and it's clear who won the game, and it wasn't terribly difficult.
You said favorable for lands, or you meant Elves?
Or Elves, sorry.
Okay, I was going to say,
Elves, yeah.
I would agree. Especially after board, Julian actually gets access to Progenitus as well. And that's a card that lands can have some difficulty dealing with. You can't Maze of it. He can actually pay for it if there's a Tabernacle out. He can, I believe, Glacial Chasm to stop Progenitus.
Yeah. That's the big trick. Kind of get that going with Loam and playing multiple lands a turn with Exploration or Mana Bond. So we'll see. Players will shuffle up for game number 2 here. We will take a look at the 2015 Season 1 Open Series schedule while we wait. We'll start in Columbus. We'll go to Philadelphia. We'll go to Washington, D.C. after that. We'll end January in Indianapolis. I expect insane turnouts for all of those shows, as the attendance numbers we've gotten for those shows over the past years have just been unbelievable.
Yeah, so we start on the East Coast, make our way toward the middle of the country, then go to the next part of Season 1.
Yeah, we'll go to Houston for the first time, which is going to be pretty great. LA, you'll be joined by Patrick in Baltimore, and then we'll do a little Grand Prix action in Miami, which should be fun.
Yeah, so loop around to the West Coast and the South, and we end with Dallas, and then back here in Richmond for our first of 4 invitationals.
Yeah, Season 1 invitational. We'll do it in Richmond. We had it in Charlotte last year. We're doing it in Richmond this year, so not very far apart, obviously, but it should be fun. I'm looking forward to see what Season 1 does bring, especially with the new Open Series structure. So, let's see what Game 2 brings here. It's like both players are going to keep their opening hand. That's a copy of Taiga. And it's an exploration. It's the new art. Can't trick me.
Yeah, that one's from Conspiracy, but you're right. Second land, then a gamble here. So once again, another great start for David. Usually, if he doesn't have life from the loam, usually that's what he gets here.
Yeah, it's basically a demonic tutor for life from the loam. As if you discard it, you don't care. You almost want to discard it, actually.
And once you have loam, then it just becomes a demonic tutor because most of the cards you find are lands, so whether it goes to the yard or your hand doesn't seem to matter.
There goes Wasteland. So loam is well, we think loam is currently in David's hand.
That would be a good bet right now.
Knab will draw a card. That is a Wooded Foothills. This is a Deathrite Shaman.
It's fortunate for Julian that he can get basics here. A lot of times these decks without basics can lose to this start because David can loam back a Wasteland. He can start playing multiple Wastelands a turn as early as turn 2.
So with Exploration in play, I think it's on David to, for him, hopefully have a copy of Punishing Fire. We'll see. Deathrite can really mess some things up, so.
Yeah, that exile, the fact that Deathrite can tap to exile a land from a graveyard is not irrelevant in this matchup.
And David's play has certainly slowed here. A very quick and easy first turn, and now he's got to give a lot of thought to the second turn. Leads me to believe he doesn't have a great answer to this thing.
Well, he wants to be sure that the Deathrite doesn't take out his life from the loam, if possible.
He's going to pick up Port here. You saw him just loam for a copy of Wasteland. Port's the forest.
Yeah, the good news for David is that if Julian makes a black source so that he can eat life from the loam, Julian doesn't play any basic swamps, so David will be able to Wasteland any black source he plays.
Deathrite's going to remove this. David, we'll see a Wirewood come into play. There's a Dried Arbor and just pass the turn back. Pretty tame turn.
Tame turn does mean that this Deathrite Shaman can go into overdrive later on with the Wirewood Symbiote. Can help to untap it. So it could make its own black mana out of a card in David's library if David leaves a land there.
Ghost Quarter has been found along with a Punishing Fire and a copy of Crop Rotation. That's what's been dredged. Ghost Quarter is basically the 5th Wasteland in this deck. That's why you find that here is we are playing in a format where there are not a lot of basic lands, actually.
No, just 2 of them in Julian's list. Elves is one of the decks that, because it wants to be able to glimpse combo, it actually plays more fetch lands than it actually plays real lands. You have a total of 9 green fetch lands, only 2 forests and 2 Dryad Arbors and 2 bayous. So 6 targets, 9 fetches.
There's Gamble again. All right. Julian grabs the die. He says, yeah, let's do this. It's going to resolve. I do want to see what David's going to get here.
Remember that if David gets a particularly problematic land, Julian can use Symbiote to untap Deathrite Shaman, and Deathrite Shaman can tap to exile a land from target land from David's graveyard. So Julian has to be careful if he's trying to get a card like Tabernacle.
Well, you just saw it.
Looks like that's what he's going to get. Well, 2/3 of the time, this is going to work out really well for David. But there's a reason they call the card Gamble.
Yeah, this is a bit risky.
It's a bit of a gamble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Middle card, and Tabernacle was the discard. So David not going to do so well on that gamble.
Yeah, I would be very surprised if Julian doesn't see this. Would want to.
Yeah, it's going to be real hard for him to do.
Yeah, actually, it looks like it's going to resolve.
No, he has to return an elf to untap.
Oh, sure,
right,
sure.
because it's an insect. Right,
yeah,
that play doesn't work.
Yeah, there's only one elf.
There's only one elf.
Yeah. And now he's going to fire away. This actually gets really bad now.
Yeah, if Julian had a second elf, he could have returned an elf to untap Deathrite. Deathrite could have eaten the Tabernacle. But you're right, the Wirewood Symbiote's an insect, not an elf. So one of the stranger cards, because the returning of an elf is actually part of the cost, so it can't be responded to.
Yep.
But it's actually one of the cogs that really makes this elf deck work.
He can afford to pay for both his creatures. Deathrite can remove a land to pay for one, and the Forest will pay for the other.
Yep. Looks like he's going to do that. Deathrite eats a land. Forest pays for the symbiote.
Somebody needs a Cradle. Though the Cradle wouldn't be long for this world due to Wasteland or Ghost Quarter.
Yeah, I mean, Ghost Quarter, remember, you can destroy any land with Ghost Quarter, and they just get to go get a basic. So you'll actually see David start to Ghost Quarter Julian's basics. Lands can be a pretty impolite deck sometimes. They actually try to blow up all your lands eventually.
This is one of my favorite Legacy decks. I've loved this deck for a really long time. It just plays unlike any other Magic deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's really abusing cards like Wasteland, like Exploration and Mana Bond.
Yeah. Yep, Ghost Quarter's going to go after the Forest.
So Julian will get his second Forest, but he only plays 2, so if David loams this one back, and I believe he will, when he goes for it again, Julian won't have a land to get.
Yep. 2 lands are going to come back. I like playing the Ghost Quarter. He can play them both, but I like playing the Ghost Quarter. Give me that Forest. Yep, nothing to search up now.
And yeah, this time Julian showing he doesn't have another basic Forest in here. It's going to be hard for him to pay for these creatures.
He gets to pay for one of them now.
The difficulty here for Julian is that he used the Deathrite to pay for Wireward Symbiote, and then he used the Symbiote ability to bounce the Deathrite before he had to sacrifice it.
Yep. So he's clear there.
But he gets 1 land here. That's about it.
Don't forget about that 1 point of damage. He's got a natural order discard, so Wirewood is not long for this world.
Yeah, on Julian's next upkeep, he's going to lose his last permanent here.
Glacial Chasm, Sphere of Resistance, and a Chalice of the Void are the cards that are turned over from Dredging of Loam. Looks like it'll be a Casting of Loam. Yep. There's the Chasm.
At this point, Julian gets to see how David has sideboarded, but Julian, having lost all his permanents, there's no real way back into the game for him here.
I would be impressed. I will say that.
Absolutely.
I know he is very, very skilled at playing elves. I will be very, very impressed this year's Deathrite Shaman. He can get his way back into this one, especially when he doesn't have a basic to search out. Yeah, there's a Bayou.
You have to admire just how much of a prison deck lands can be at times, where it can go for the flawless 0 permanent victory.
Hey, if that's your style of Magic.
I actually want you to have no cards in play, lands or otherwise.
David Long going to Dredge Loam. And the interesting thing is that we see some players who have just been playing lands for a little while. Think of David Long, think of a player like Jody Keith. Some players that when we do see them on the Open Series, they're just always playing the same deck in Legacy. But this deck has actually kind of been a response to the Delver decks that have picked up, and the Stoneblade deck that BBD won the GP with. Like, most people believe that Lance is a good matchup against those decks.
Lance is notoriously good against any deck that's trying to play fair Magic here. Its weakness is that there's a lot of combo decks in Legacy, and Lance is not particularly good against any of them.
David tries to be okay against them with, 4 Sphere of Resistance, a Chalice, a Thorn.
He's got almost a 15-card sideboard for combo decks.
Gonna activate the Deathrite Shaman to keep it in play.
Yeah, it's gonna be able to pay for itself for a while, but I'm not sure if Julian's gonna make any progress while that's happening.
Dredge Loam. Couple of cards. Thespian Stage among them. Should be able to work towards Depths plus Stage now. And again, that's what I like about lands now, is that previously, and this was years ago, I think of Grand Prix Boston when I played this deck, in a side event. It was, all right, I will return my Barbarian Ring and shoot you for 2.
We would be watching this game for a while.
Yeah. Some versions of the deck played factories. Some played Nantuko Monastery.
Yeah, that's just some way to win,
Yep. And Julian is going to concede this game. So David Long is going to win game number 2 here. Lance and Elves will be heading to a third game in just a moment. Tabernacle, very powerful against this deck.
So actually, back in those versions, I believe some of them ran Academy Ruins because your win condition was slow enough that you had to worry about decking yourself before you could kill them with your win condition.
There were versions in the early days of the Open Series that did play Academy Ruins. They also played Teleria West, Intuition. You could smokestack them to death, or you could Academy Ruins and Mindslaver.
Was there? So I guess the question is, how do you know, if your win condition is something like a Barbarian Ring and you're dredging, you have to worry about milling yourself before you kill your opponent, right?
That is a bit of a concern, yes.
Okay. I mean, maybe that Barbarian Ring is 10 cards from the bottom. That's not going to kill them in time.
That is a bit of a concern. I think some versions may have played 2 copies of Barbarian Ring, but yes, that was...
okay, that solves everything.
Accelerated, yeah. It was definitely a concern. And then, Stage and Depths came along, and now not only can you win a game a little bit quicker, but you can actually steal games from combo decks if you just assemble that combo pretty quick, which is why you see crop rotations in this deck.
Yeah. What I've been impressed at, back in the day, the lands mirror match was... was played on so many levels.
Oh my gosh.
Involves strategically bazooka bogging some of your opponent's key pieces.
The Lands Mirror, you would just see 2 players. You'd walk over and you see 2 mana bonds and you just immediately turn the other way.
And
just
like, no.
Though I do know this round's going to go to time. It would take a little while.
Someone has to win eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually, you start getting into wars of bazooka bogging each other, I believe.
I think it revolved around that, but there was also a time when bazooka bog just wasn't a card that existed.
Okay, so before then, eventually, sometimes one player actually just locks out the other player.
Yeah.
If I get more explorations, if more explorations is maybe what this comes down to, then I can wasteland you faster than you can replay the lands.
Yeah, I think some versions of the deck played Graveyard Hate too. It's so long ago to even think about.
It's all really, it comes down to really degenerate things, though.
Nothing we would call honest.
This is the kind of Magic I get really excited about that.
Trust me, I know.
You think about the match and think, well, what actually matters here? What are we doing?
It's a good question how lands was back then. Now it's about Dark Depths and just assembling
now
that.
they have a real win condition. They can win in less than half an hour.
Very quickly, we'll take a look at our Season 2 schedule for 2015. Really short season this go-around. You'll see that we'll start in Syracuse, we'll go to Providence, Cleveland. After that, then we'll go to Seattle. You and Patrick will take care of that. I'll actually be doing battle, so hopefully I have a good weekend there. Dallas, Worcester, Columbus. All of a sudden, Season 2 is over. So only 7 dates on that season.
Once again, starting on the East Coast, loop over to the West, go down South, end back in the Midwest.
Yeah, Origins Game Fair is where we'll wrap it up for our Season 2 Invitational in Columbus. We'll have Modern there, so that'll be a lot of fun for our players. Hopefully for you guys at home as well who are watching.
So 2 games in, who do you want for this third one?
So I was just thinking about that, right? Because game 1, Julian didn't do anything, he didn't have a busted draw. He just, cast Natural Order, Greater Behemoth, kill you.
Yep.
Game 2, David, Loam, Tabernacle, gamble for Tabernacle, kill you. So both decks did what they're supposed to do in each game. So I guess if I had to pick one, someone who's on the play, so else.
That certainly seems important.
Yeah.
I mean, Lands has this thing. Against their combo decks, you still can win games when you're on the play, even when you're... Some of your draws are so degenerate that they will beat anything when they're on the play. You can see things like turn 1, Mox Diamond, Exploration, Land, Sphere of Resistance go. Things like, your opponent's going to start turn 1 with a Sphere of Resistance in play, and you have 3 mana.
Yep.
There are these draws that will really beat anything, and a lot of times Lands is hoping to put together something like that against combo decks, one of these really explosive turn 1s. It's why they side in cards like Sphere of Resistance and Chalice of the Void. Their deck's pretty good at playing those on turn 1 or certainly by turn 2.
The thing is I'm not saying with any confidence on who I think is going to win. A lot of the times I think it's kind of cut and dry. Sure. I think the sideboard will affect things this way, so I would give, the percentage to X person. I don't feel that way because I think that David has the ability to just, do some of the things you said, which is just come out of the gates really quickly, even though he's on the draw, due to a card like Mox Diamond or due to a card like Exploration, or if a mana bond draw lines up correctly, assuming it's still in his deck, he has 2 copies in his main deck, he can just go, well, you're dead, and we're done talking here. So
yeah, he needs one of those early locks, though. I still think, especially when they're on the play, that Elves is going to be the favorite here. It's still a combo deck.
Julian's going to keep his opening hand. Let's see if David does.
And actually, on our backup match, we have another Lands player today. This is Jarvis Yu, moves to 4-1, defeating Brian Braunduin.
So if you follow the Open Series, Kurt Spies won the Open Series in Season 1 in Baltimore with lands, a deck he's been playing for a very long time. Beautiful version of the deck. I believe all the cards are foreign. Most of them are foil. Jarvis is playing his deck.
Yes,
Kurt had to work.
Actual same card. His deck is in the card for the actual physical cards.
The actual physical cards. Kurt had to work this weekend, so he couldn't come. And Jarvis said, I want to give lands a try. I think it's well positioned in the metagame. And again, this is why we're starting to see players who don't often play lands play it. He just beat Brian Bronduin. Of course, he just won Grand Prix New Jersey with the Jeskai Stoneplay deck, and I imagine that's what he's playing again today. And Jarvis just beat it with lands.
Yeah. So let's see. With Julian on the play, what kind of interaction can David have?
Not a bad start.
Turn 1 exploration is where a lot of his great draws begin. But you can see just how much impact being on the draw here can be. This is a lot less scary of a start when Julian already gets to have a Deathrite in play.
Yeah, Deathrite, playing the huge role. It's a Grove. It's interesting. He's going to reach in. Perhaps a spell to cast?
Yeah, he could have a gamble, maybe. There aren't too many spells that he actually can cast. The deck is a more than half lands.
Let's see if turn 2 will be a more explosive one here for Julian. It was just a simple fetch and a Deathrite Shaman in the first turn, though that is one of the more important cards in the matchup. One could argue the most important card on his side of the table, at least in the early stages of the game.
He wants to get extra mana that'll help him not get locked out of the game by the lands player. Remember, lands lock pieces in this matchup are Glacial Chasm, Tabernacle, and then eventually Punishing Fire.
Deathrite number 2.
Players, I would like to let you know that I'm currently taking sign-ups for the...
There's also a Pithing Needle in Julian's hand.
If you would like to be a part of that, come on and see me at the
There's Windswept Heath.
registration stage, and I will get you signed up.
Has some utility in the matchup. You can't needle the Grove of the Burn Willows or the Tabernacle.
Yeah, those are just always going to happen.
They're just going to happen. You can needle Mazavith.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it plays a big role after sideboard. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we just boarded those out.
Yeah, the mazes, they're not great.
Don't tap for mana. Maybe. And there's a lot of different ways you can go. I'm going to play a Heritage Druid here.
3 elves in play. Julian may continue to make creatures.
There's 3.
It looks like multiple Pithing Needles.
We'll get confirmation on what that's naming here in just a moment.
Also, players, I currently have a warning spot.
There are only so many targets in Long's deck for those. So looking through, you can name the Thespian Stage combo, which is what he has named with the first one.
Yep. You can name Port, you can name Wasteland. Wasteland doesn't look like it's going to play a role in this game. You mentioned Maze of the Ith, but we think that's in the board. Ghost Quarter.
Seismic Assault, that's out of the board. You could name it. It certainly is a card that Julian would have a heck of a time beating.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he sees that one coming. That one's not ubiquitous in land decks. So the pressure's on a little bit here for David. I mean, his graveyard's going to get messed with since there are 2 Deathrite Shamans in play. It's not like Julian has like a great clock or anything, though. Looks like he may be playing a Port. Yep. And he brings Gamble forward. Yes.
All right, so he's going to take a gamble, see what card he's going to get. Julian is well positioned to combo out next turn. He gets untapped with a lot of mana.
The weapon of choice was a Dark Depths.
Interesting.
So maybe he wants to combo. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a Tabernacle.
I believe it's a Tabernacle.
Yeah.
David does still have 1 mana left, by the way, or 1 land drop rather left, thanks to exploration.
Here we go. 1.
He would love
Tackle.
to. Wow, that was a huge hit on the gamble from Julian.
It is and it isn't. It was a freebie.
David's not playing fair when he gambles.
Yep.
He gets to win every time.
Yep, it's a loam. Get this back. You mentioned he's only played 1 land. That's the second one.
And this is where the strength of the land deck comes from. If you get to start, if every game you have a loam and exploration, this deck is among the best in the format.
I miss playing this deck. I've always been such a big fan of this deck. Because Gamble is just basically, demonic.
Gamble's very unfair in this deck.
Yeah, this might be like the best Gamble deck of all time or whatever. It's just demonic tuner in this deck. I know some people tested a version way back when. This is like 2008 or whatever. They had Entomb in it. So that you can entomb for loam or entomb for the lands. It's not the same as gambling, though, because sometimes you actually do have to gamble for a card that you want to keep.
Well, gamble it's like an entomb that sometimes it goes to your hand.
Yeah. But you could get a little creative with deck building with some entombing. We've seen way back earlier this year, Ken and Haas do that, entombing Nether Spirit and a couple other cards. So it does allow for some creativity in deck building.
See right now, Julian using the Death Race to get rid of that life from the loam.
Mm-hmm. That may have just been a one-shotter with the life from the loam, and if that's the case, it did some pretty good work. He gets to keep these.
And because he used the Death Race to get rid of life from the loam, he only could pay for 2 of his creatures.
Get you for 1, put you to 19.
And Julian with weapons in his hand, but no way of moving forward. He has cards like Pithing Needle in his hand right now.
Yeah. I think he also has an Abrupt Decay over there, which he boarded in, which isn't playing a huge role.
This is why, so Elves is still a combo deck, but this is, I think, the reason why Lance has more game against it than it has against most combo decks, is because cards like Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale just happen to be excellent hate cards for the Elves deck. If you think about something like the Storm matchup for lands, they don't have a land that interacts so favorably with Storm.
At least not yet.
No, there's no rule of law on a land.
Yeah, I hope one's coming.
That would be real. Oh boy. That would wreck like every deck I love playing.
I would be surprised if we ever saw something like that get printed. Like, that's the kind of card that gets printed like long ago, and you're just thinking, what were they thinking? Like with Tabernacle?
Yeah, I mean,
just like, what is that? What are they doing?
Nowadays, lands generally tap for mana.
Yeah.
But the chokehold here continues to tighten.
That's
Sphere resistance. All spells now cost 1 more. Julian has to pay 1 for all his creatures on upkeep. You see his hands are tied. Is that turn he just paid for the Heritage Druid, attacked for 1, and had to say go?
Oh, just get him that way. Just get the
16
points
16
over.
to go?
Yeah.
As long as David doesn't draw another Punishing Fire or a copy of Grove of the Burn Willows ever.
Or doesn't use the Grove that's in play and the Punishing Fire that's in the graveyard.
Well, that's also problematic.
If
there's one hiding under that wasteland, huh?
Yeah, if he doesn't do that, then he's probably going to win.
Yeah, and you see David showing little concern for the Heritage Druid, instead just choosing to make the lock even harder. Second Sphere of Resistance. All of Julian's spells now cost 2 more. And he has to pay for them. He's just tightening his control over Julian's mana.
I guess this is what it's like playing against shops in Vintage.
You just don't get to play anything.
Yeah, you just don't get to do anything.
That's a joy of a deck in Vintage.
Oh, it depends on what you enjoy, Matthias.
Okay, so I don't like interaction, and even that's too little interaction for me.
Yeah,
where it's like
I enjoy my opponent not being able to do anything. It's my favorite.
Well, see, the problem is like I somewhat enjoy watching them try to do stuff and eventually having it not do anything. The problem with shops is that they actually never do anything, like anything. I play turn 1 Trinisphere, and
it's beautiful.
then it's like they don't do a thing. I'd like it if they, they have to put up some resistance, and then you have to stop them.
It's
like I love what
art.
David's doing here. Julian at one point had some creatures, and then they all went away, and now there's some spheres. It's like you got that struggle, right?
The struggle is real.
They have to struggle for it to be fun.
I guess you like giving them the glimmer of hope and then taking it away.
You like snuffing it out. It's that
Okay.
when that expression when they realize that they're never going to cast another spell.
Okay. We enjoy different brands of fun.
Shops is just turn 1. It's turn 1, game over.
Yeah. I won the die roll. You lose. For the
Mox
most part.
Workshop Sphere.
Yeah. For the most part, yeah. You lose. That's what this feels like a shop's game. This is part of the reason that you don't really want those kind of decks in Legacy or Modern.
The Elsewhere doesn't even ask, how are you going to win? The answer is not relevant to the as long as one exists.
If the Else player asked me right now, if Julian asked me how I was going to win if I was David, I'd say, how are you going to win? How about that?
That's when I'd be like, well, I have this Academy Ruins in my deck.
I'll kill you with Wrath's Edge. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Gonna do some loaming.
Sure. Get back at Thespian stage.
A very expensive loam. You're gonna play 2 lands.
Sure.
Getcha. One more.
Eventually, maybe he's going to kill him with this 4-mana Punishing Fire and Grove of the Burn Willows. That would take a while. He only can do it once a turn.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
That would take, 21 turns because he has to kill the Heritage Druid first.
I guess
Wait, actually 20 turns because the life gain doesn't work on... Yeah, you get to skip the last turn because of how Punishing Fire works.
Oh, yeah, because last turn deals 2.
Yeah, last turn I can steal 2.
Yep.
So it's only 20 turns.
David going to dredge here with loam. There's a stage and a wasteland. So somebody's just looking for a Dark Depths at this point. Crop rotation if that's still in the deck. I don't know. I think that this deck, all kidding aside, I think that lands might be a really good choice for the short term until people react to it, because it does seem like it's really, really good against fair decks.
Well, we saw this in Grand Prix New Jersey, though it didn't top 8. The last undefeated deck of the tournament at 12-0-1 was a lands deck. And we actually had 2 lands decks go undefeated on day 1.
Yep.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. We have seen over the last couple of years, through the printing of a lot of new cards like Treasure Cruise, Deathrite Shaman, a lot of these cards, they really have helped out the fair blue decks of the format to the point where even someone who likes playing combo, I think I even see the writing where, these blue decks, they're all good against combo now. And it's really hard to play a combo deck. So as you've seen a lot of the top players migrate over toward these Stoneblade decks, these Delver decks, that is less people are playing combo, which means suddenly lands matchups in each tournament just look better and better.
Because I'm watching, this kind of game unfold here, and we watched the previous 2 games, and it feels like, I was expecting Elves to just kind of be able to push over what Lance is doing, but Lance is pretty consistent. Gamble, Loam, Punishing Fire to be able to interact early, crop rotation too.
Well, they have so much tutoring. They have Gamble and crop rotation, and this really big draw engine on life from the Loam that even though this one Tabernacle, for example, just gets so much mileage in the matchup because David can find it so consistently.
David's going to untap all of his lands. Some of them tap for mana, some of them don't. He'll go dredging Loam. 3 cards. There's no exploration of Grove and a Wasteland. Loam will go to the hand. Now, Loam currently costing 4 mana because of the 2 copies of Sphere of Resistance in play, but he's got enough mana to satisfy that cost. Going to organize things. Forgot if he can leave some ports available, which it looks like he can. So now we can start locking up the lands that are in play too. Now this is just a prison strategy. It's just working perfectly.
Eventually he'll find a Ghost Quarter. He'll quarter away these forests. Then we'll be back to 0 permanents. Well, 1 permanent. We have Pithing Needle. Remember that needle's on Thespian stage, so he actually can't go for the Dark Depths kill.
Port you up real good. It'll have to probably be a Grove kill, unless David has some sort of artifact removal in his deck for Needle, which I guess I would be a little surprised about. Though, we could go manual mode with Dark Depths.
He could thaw it out.
Yep. Break
No,
out
that
of
would
the
actually
ice.
work. That would work just fine.
Yeah.
Who needs to copy it? We'll just pay 30.
We don't get to see the thaw happen pretty much ever.
He's got 11 minutes. He could probably... No, not a problem.
Perhaps it's time to dredge again. Yes. Better than drawing a card. Want to draw 1, you can draw 3. I guess he could have drawn another Sphere of Resistance. Not that he needs it.
Lands really has standardized on its build a lot, too, we've seen over the last few months.
It's becoming a lot more clear-cut. When lands initially showed up, I remember the list. It was like 4 Exploration, 4 copies of Mana Bond, 4 Life in the Loams, some number of Gambles, some number of Mulches, and then lands. It was initially called 42.
Right.
Because it played 42 lands and then 18 spells. And I think the spells, again, were, 4 Explorations.
Loam.
4 Loams is 8. 4 Mana Bonds was 12. Like 4 Mulches was 16, 2 Gambles.
It had like I thought it had 1 Engineered Explosives.
Some versions may have,
did.
Like this is way back when they were like base red, green, and Barbarian Ring and some other stuff. I mean, you have to go to some nice archives in 2006 or 7 for that. Then people started working in blue. I think Chris Walterek, when the Open Series was kind of new, he was doing that with Intuitions and Teleria West and some other things. And now we've got this version that has, again, Dark Depths and Stage, less cycling lands. I'm taking a look at David's deck list. He only has 1 Tranquil Thicket.
Right.
You used to play like some number of barren moors in here, maybe like a forgotten cave, 4 thickets were like an auto include, so if someone tried to mess with your loam, you could cycle in response. Like people have moved away from that like entirely. Yes, you just don't need it anymore.
The cycling lands life from the loam engine, something that in old extended saw a lot of play.
Yeah. The confinement assault loam deck from old extended. Now I feel really old.
The Cal.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite decks too. I've always just been a big fan of loam strategies in general. This one is kind of like the most offensive.
They're usually pretty unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to
keep drawing and
It was
discarding.
Raven's Crime when that one. It was.
Yeah, that was one. That's another card you can
That's
play in
another
this
one
kind
you
of
could
deck. Some people are playing Urborg to be able to facilitate that. You can crop rotation for Urborg,
Sure.
and you have all the black mana in the world to be able to do stuff. The nice thing about this deck is that there's a lot of wiggle room on how you can build it. I mean, you're working with 35 lands. You have crop rotation and gamble, so you can play some spicy one-ofs. I've gone as deep as Nomad Stadium. Not proud of that.
Was that one too?
Exactly.
I'm not even sure I know that one. It's not Nomad Outpost. I know that one. That's new. They have a stadium too.
They do have a stadium. They do have a stadium. Sometimes you're in the market for gaining some life.
Oh, it's that card.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
There it is.
There we go. Yeah. It's the white barbarian ring.
Sometimes you got to beat the burn deck. Get a little bit of life. It's not pretty, but sometimes you got to do it.
I've seen Zurin Orb in this situation
Yeah,
too.
Zorin Orb's so good. I remember Chris used to play that in the deck.
Transmute for it.
Yep.
Sack all your lands. Get him back.
Yeah, I don't think, I think we're going to watch here as David eventually probably
Here comes Merit Lage. He's slowly gonna break the
He's
ice.
going to thaw out and probably make a 20-20 here if Julian will keep playing it out, which I think he will. And we're just going to see Julian continue to get ported here.
He's gone this far.
Yeah, why concede now?
No, I want to see it. I want to see the 20. I'm going to make him get out the token,
Yeah.
too.
Never mind. He's got a Crossing Grip after sideboard.
Oh, okay.
That's too easy.
Well, that's not nearly as exciting,
Yeah.
but that'll do it.
Julian has had enough. David Long's going to win this match with lands. He takes down Julian playing elves. He moves on to 5-0. You mentioned Jarvis, you won his match. He is 4-1 with lands. This might be a really, really good tournament for this deck.
I mean, if you look at the results from last weekend, it is a slew of decks that are weak to lands. I'm not sure lands had a bad, well, I was going to say I'm not sure it had a bad matchup in the top 8. It had one bad matchup in the top 8.
Storm, probably?
There was a Storm deck in GP New Jersey's top 8. That's not a good matchup for lands. But I think out of that top 8, it had 7 good matchups and 1 bad.
And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, and I agree with you overall. I think that Storm is probably a bad matchup for lands.
Yeah.
But I do think that with David Long's sideboard, and depending on the composition of the sideboard, when you see the 4 spheres, you see the Thorn, you see the Chalice,